This weekend, Imsa heads north to the land of poutine, maple syrup, and igloos. Well, maybe not igloos in the summer, but the point is that Imsa's heading to Canada. And here are the 5 big storylines to watch for in this weekend's race. After returning to the Imsa grid at the Sale in 6 Hours of Glen, the LMP2 class will once again be the headlining class this year at CTMP. In last year's race, the LMP2s were the headlining class of an Imsa race weekend for the first time since 2018, and honestly, they delivered a pretty good show. Now you see the comments on virtually every Imsa post or video, or basically anything that they do, where there's people in the comments begging for the GTPs to come back to CTMP. And sure, while it sucks that the GTPs aren't on the grid for this round at CTMP, the LMP2s still have some fierce battles, there's some top-notch drivers making the trip north as well, and there's just still a lot to look forward to. I mean, we're still going to have the GTD Pro cars on the grid. They've had some incredible battles throughout this season and are sure to feature more close racing at CTMP. And then you have the GTD class, which also features many of those close battles, but also there's a number of local Canadian drivers to cheer on in their home race. The point here is that just because the GTPs aren't present, the LMP2s are definitely capable of headlining a weekend. Last year, we saw great battles unfold here, especially in the midfield, and it was shaping up to be a fuel mileage thriller. Although in classic CTMP fashion, we hit a late race full course yellow and a sprint to the finish anyways. And as I mentioned a second ago, even though the GTPs aren't going to be on the grid, there's still a bunch of top-notch driver talent that's making the trip north. Let's talk about that next. Now okay, we established GTPs aren't going to be on the grid here at CTMP. But that does not mean that we will have no GTP presence at all on the grid this weekend. 3 full season GTP drivers will be on the grid in LMP2 rides this weekend, as the CTMP round unfortunately goes head to head with the WEC race in Brazil. You have Renger van de Zande, who's going to be filling in at Tower Motorsports alongside co-driver John Ferrano, as Sebastian Bourdais is going to be competing in that WEC race. Renger competed in this race last year with Tower as well, finishing 6th in the LMP2 class. Tom Blomqvist will also be called into action at CTMP, and he'll be racing with the 6 Hours of the Glen winners, the 22 United Autosport entry, to be paired with Dan Goldberg. Tom recently competed in an LMP2 car at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, where he finished 14th in class with CLX Pure Racing. Roman DeAngelis will also be on the grid in a GTD car this weekend, as the Valkyrie is of course not competing this weekend at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, and in the WEC, Aston Martin has opted for 2 driver lineups there. That means that the Canadian driver will have a chance to defend his win in the GTD class. So even though the GTPs aren't going to be present on the grid this weekend, there's still going to be some GTP drivers on the grid, just racing in some slightly different machinery. There's also a couple of other notable driver substitutions here. Alex Quinn is going to sub for Malte Jakobsen in the 04 CrowdStrike entry, while Canadian Phil Thayer will be filling in, man, that's a lot of F's in a row, in the number 2 United Autosport entry. And in the 18 United Autosports entry, Ryan Dalziel returns to the seat of an LMP2 car in Imsa, and he'll be alongside, again, local Canadian bronze driver Travis Hill. Now, it's not just those GTP drivers that are making the trip north of the border that the fans will be keeping an eye on this weekend. There are also plenty of local Canadian drivers to cheer on in their home race. First of all, let's start off with the WeatherTech Championship in LMP2. We'll see Phil Thayer making his Imsa WeatherTech Championship debut in the number 2 United Autosports entry. He has also been doing some racing this season in the GS class of the Michelin Pilot Challenge. Of course, we have John Ferrano, a regular in the 8 Tower Motorsports entry. Tower Motorsports is also a Canadian team as well. You also have Travis Hill in the 18 Era Motorsports entry. He's also making his Imsa WeatherTech Sports Car Championship debut, and he has recently won the HSR LMP3 Championship. And then you also have Chris Cumming in the 74 Pratt Miller entry. We don't have any Canadian drivers competing in the GTD Pro class, but it is worth noting that Ford Multimatic, while I don't believe the race team is necessarily based out of Toronto, I could be wrong on that, but Multimatic does have a very strong presence in the greater Toronto area, and there will be plenty of team support for them this weekend as they kind of treat it like a home race. Of course, we also have Pfaff Motorsports, who will have a ton of team support this weekend. They recently hosted an open house to unveil their livery for the weekend and build up a bit of hype a week out from the race. Then there's a pretty large Canadian presence in GTD. Here we have Parker Thompson in the 12 Vassar Sullivan Lexus, or a Fadani in the 13 AWA Corvette, a very Canadian livery on that car for a very Canadian team as well. Roman DeAngelis will be in the 27 Heart of Racing Aston Martin, Robert Wickens in the 36 DXDT Corvette, and Misha Goiberg in the 78 Forte Racing Lamborghini. There's also going to be a large presence in the Support Series races that are here this weekend. In the Michelin Pilot Challenge, in the GS class, you have Daniel Morad in the 57 Windward Racing Mercedes. Meanwhile, in TCR, Mark Wilkins will be in the 33 Brian Hurd Autosport Hyundai. Ron and Megan Tomlinson will be in the 37 Precision Racing Audi. Sam Baker and James Vance will be in the 52 Baker Racing Audi. Dean Baker is also on the grid in the 56 Baker Racing Audi. Notably, both of those Baker Racing cars are a local team. You have Denny Dupont in the 76 Brian Herta Autosports Hyundai, and then you have Carl Whitmer and LP Montour in the 93 Montreal Motorsports Group Honda. In the VP Sports Car Challenge, you have Jonathan Woolridge in the 54 MLT LMP3 entry, Samantha Tan in the 38 ST Racing BMW in the GTDX class, and in the GSX class, you have Justin DiBenedetto in the number 4 Justin DiBenedetto Racing Porsche GSX. Notably, that car is also supported by Tooth Autosport, who are also a local team. Then we have a couple of drivers in the MX-5 Cup as well. You'll have Damon Oki in the 09 car, and in the 29 you have Marcelo Paniccia. Now it's always a little bit extra special when you're coming to a track for your home race, so look for all of these drivers to have a little bit more motivation behind them in their respective races this weekend. Next up, we have the GTD Pro Championship, and let me tell you, it's starting to heat up. We have 5 races to go this season, and it's a pretty varied schedule in what we have left. You have races like CTMP, where the LMP2s are headlining. You have a GT only round at VIR, where it will be just the GTD Pro and GTD cars. And then you also have a couple of Endurance Cup races mixed in there as well. 6 hours of Indy, and then the 10-hour season-ending Motul Petit Le Mans. There's sure to be some great racing along the way, and the championship hunt is very tight. At the top of the GTD Pro standing, it's the number 3 Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller Motorsports Corvette. They have 1,632 points. That's a 52-point lead over the number 77 AO Racing Porsche. Then you have in 3rd place the 81 Dragon Speed entry. They're 114 points back. And in a tie for 4th, you have the 48 Paul Miller Racing BMW and the 64 Ford Multimatic Motorsports Mustang, 115 points back. So there, you have 5 different manufacturers in the top 5. I know it's 115 points, but 115 point swing is fairly small in Imsa. You could easily see that made up or lost in the course of a single race weekend. Now, just taking a quick look at how this championship fight could unfold at CTMP, and I guess we'll start off with the Corvette, who's leading the championship points. They were pretty darn strong here last year, as they picked up a dominant 1-2 finish in this race. Porsche, meanwhile, finished 3rd in this race last year and 2nd the year before. A little bit of a step behind Corvette in this race last year, but still a strong race for them nonetheless. BMW struggled in this race last year. They got into a bit of trouble when they made some contact with a car. But then if you want to look back to 2023, they won in the GTD class. Is there going to be any impact that new Evo car has coming into CTMP this year? It hasn't really shown to be a hindrance at any of the other races this year, so I still expect that BMW to be strong, and we'll see if they can bounce back from that disappointing result that they had here last year. Ford finished 4th in this race last year, although it should be noted they were a bit behind where the Corvettes and the Porsche was on pace. They were probably closer to the Porsche on pace, but everybody was a bit of a step behind where the Corvettes were in this race last year. And then finally, there's Ferrari. We don't really know what to expect from the Ferrari. There was a single Ferrari on the grid last year in the GTD class, but I think they're definitely a bit of an unknown coming into this weekend. Now let's switch gears here and talk about a championship battle that we don't often get a chance to focus on. You see, every year Imsa hands out a couple of awards that are not focused on the best of the best factory drivers. Rather, these are awarded to the bronze drivers on the grid. Yes, the bronze drivers that win the annual Jim Truman and Bob Akin Awards are granted an automatic invite to the following year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. So there's definitely a big prize to play for here. Now, I'll admit that I don't usually touch on these championships very much, or at least until the end of the year, but these battles are starting to heat up. Now, the Jim Truman Award is given to the top bronze driver in the LMP2 class, and given that the LMP2 class has a bronze driver mandate, there's a lot of drivers that are in the running for that award this year. With 4 races remaining in their season, the number 22 United Autosports Dan Goldberg has a 94-point lead over Gar Robinson in the 74 Riley. Again, 94 points isn't a huge difference here. And this LMP2 class always produces some great racing. It produced some great close racing here at CTMP last year. And given that it's the headlining class this weekend, it's going to be worthwhile to keep that bronze driver battle in the back of your mind as the race winds down and see who can set themselves up for a strong second half of the season. Now, the other award is the Bob Akin Award and is given to the top bronze driver in the GTD class. At the halfway mark of the season, it's a dead heat between the 13 AWA Corvette driver, Ore Fadani, who is also the defending winner of this award, and Brandon Aribe in the 70 Inception Racing Ferrari. Both of them have 1,590 points. Now, the only other full season bronze driver that was in the running here was Sheena Monk, but she's dropped out of the running for the season, so it's down to these two to duke it out in the second half. So that makes it pretty easy to remember for you. In the Bronze Cup, in the GTD class, just keep an eye on the 13 and the 70, and there's a good chance that they're going to be finding themselves battling with one another on track at some point in this race, so just keep in mind the significance that that could have at the end of the year. Now, while you're preparing for this weekend's race, why not get caught up in all the IMSA news that happened in the month of June? Lucky for you, I have a recap of all of the IMSA news from June. You can check it out right here. Huge shout out to all the channel supporters. If you too want to support the show, you can head to patreon.com/offintheesses or click that join button below. Once again though, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.